This is Andre Koen, and I want to welcome you back to another session. And in this session, we're really going to delve into this concept of this kind of cultural agility model that we've been working with. And uh, I really want to set the tone that it is context that actually drives our behaviors. And so, as context changes, so should our behaviors. And so, when we think about this notion of kind of why we act the way we do, why do we see the world in the ways that we do, we have to recognize that we all have been introduced to a paradigm. And that paradigm consists of three parts. It is what we know, it's what we know we don't know, and it's our blind spots. And given whatever context, time frame, country, nation state, educational system you've been brought up in, that has set the context for how you see the world or your worldview, i.e., your paradigm, right? So, and once we have that established, then we recognize that our behaviors should follow suit. And so, as context changes, so must our behavior. And so, when we think about that, our context requires that we behave in different ways, right? So here is an example of how context drives our behaviors. So if I'm engaging with a cactus that is outside, that is in nature, that is outside of my home, the way I interact with that cactus, the way I treat that cactus is very different than if that cactus is in my home or is something that is connected to me in some way, right? So the notion that I would treat all cactuses the same um, isn't helpful if it's not in the right context. The same can be said for how we relate to our coworkers, to students, to patients and clients. If we don't take into consideration the context, either that they're coming from, the context that we're in, then oftentimes we will have off-purpose behavior. And off-purpose behavior is any behavior that does not lead us to our end goal. Thus, we must have an end goal in our interactions with others, right? And so context drives our behaviors. And if we don't understand the context, we won't understand the behavior. So how do I get a better sense of context? How do I get a better sense of seeing where my worldview or my paradigm may be falling short? So I'm going to give you a tool that allow you to kind of address your own paradigm, right? And so we know that, again, context and behaviors are related. So typically what I have people do with this exercise is cut a piece of pie of the size of what they know of everything that there is to know. Secondly, I have them draw a piece of pie that is the size of what they know we don't know, right? And then lastly, the third piece of pie is what's left over, which is typically our blind spot. So this exercise usually takes no more than, it can take as little as 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but actually I've spent 45 minutes just on that part of the exercise as we go into phase 2 of the exercise, right? So phase 2 is really, I ask people to put a square where they believe, given what they know they don't know, and their blind spots, where do they think their unconscious bias lives? Where does unconscious bias live? And then I talk about this notion of microaggressions. Where might microaggressions either stem from, or where might they show up in one's paradigm, right? And then I have people put a triangle where they think the root of stereotype threat is, which is kind of this identity threat, or kind of the negative self-talk, if you will, particularly around diversity issues. And then lastly, I ask people kind of to shade in where they believe they have cognitive control, where they have the ability to use critical thought, to use data, to use information provided by their emotions to actually control their microaggressions, their unconscious bias, and their stereotype threat. And so that's the second part of that. Because once I'm able to do that, once I'm able to kind of isolate those things and recognize where my seat of power is, then I can be in better control when I was applying that to a cactus, but now I'm dealing with an aloe vera, right? So now I have a new context. I have a new client, a new patient, a new coworker that I'm engaging with. I can now take the lessons from really analyzing my paradigm or my worldview and add those transferable skills to this new situation, right? My interaction with this new person. And so when we think about that, that leads us back to this notion of how we can be culturally agile. And so this model really presents for us some opportunities to be more effective as we continue to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So again, I'm really excited to be with you. I can't wait till we see each other again in the next session. And again, my name is Andre Koen, and I can't wait to see who we become.